Castle Planning Commission. This is our May 28th, 2025 meeting. Would you join me in a flag salute? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Director Fitzgibbons or Senior Planner Coyle, or something? You want to call the roll?
I'd be happy to call the roll. Commissioner Keck.
Present.
Commissioner Lowe is not here yet. Commissioner Van Anna.
Here.
Commissioner Blocker.
Here.
Vice Chair Troutman.
Here.
Chair Gatzik.
Here.
All right.
First item is to approve the agenda. Are there any changes to the agenda? Okay, we'll consider that approved. Next is approval of the minutes. First is the minutes of March 26th. You've had them to review. Does anybody have any changes to those? Okay, we'll consider those approved. Next is the meetings of our April 23rd meeting. And again, are there any corrections, changes to those minutes? Okay, we'll consider those approved as well. That brings us to the public comment period. And I'll just give a little refresher for those in the audience. We have two periods tonight where there's an opportunity to comment. One is our normal public comment period, and then the second, which will follow probably 5 minutes or 10 minutes later, is a public hearing on middle housing. That public hearing begins with a presentation by Tyler Coyle of the staff. And that's really a better place for you to make your comments about the housing ordinances that we'll be talking about. It's also, you may benefit from hearing the remarks that Tyler has to make, because it may clear up some questions you have in your mind before you make your comments. But in either case, you can comment in either or both of those periods. But we will begin with the general public comment period. And if you have a comment to make, please approach the podium, give us your name, and you have 3 minutes. And we're ready for our first commenter? Okay. Yeah, well, somebody might come behind you.
All right, so start the clock. Hello, commissioners. It's been a long time since I was behind this podium. Charlie, I can use your first names now. When I'm in your seats, I'm not allowed to use first names, but hello, Aaron, Charlie, Lynn, Anita, Paul, Stu, and Tyler. I just came here because I'm on my way to Dino's for trivia night. And I thought I'm going to swing by and, first of all, thank you guys for what you're doing. I know it's not fun. You don't get paid. I get paid now, which is kind of cool. So hopefully you'll get a promotion like I did. But I'm going to trivia night tonight, and I got some trivia for you because I literally just learned it tonight. Who said I can see further because I stood on the shoulders of giants? Anybody? I didn't know either. Sir Isaac Newton said that. So the reason I said it is because I feel like you guys are standing on some shoulders right now. Not mine. I don't know if I did much, but you have some huge decisions to make for this city. And great folks like Amy Dantzler and Brian Kennard and Scott Marsh, we worked on a survey for weeks and weeks, and probably months, right, Charlie, forever. And we did these sessions. We got to meet with the public. And we got to ask questions of them and did a penny poll. And we asked them, what matters most to you? How would you describe Newcastle? Why did you move to Newcastle? What do you want Newcastle to look like in 5 years, 10 years? And we asked them to use words to describe Newcastle. And I've said this in numerous forums. This is not breaking news. The top 3 words that they used in this order, if I'm not mistaken, were small, safe, and quiet. I just ask you to keep that in mind as you make these decisions. That's my guiding light. That was my guiding light when I was vice chair on the Planning Commission. That's my guiding light now. And so I ask you just to keep that in mind. What are you going to do with this city? Because it's very much in your hands. Then you kick it to the council, and the council does some of the work. But really, the minutiae is up to you guys and Tyler and Aaron. And just please keep that in mind. There's a lot of pressure to change Newcastle, and I feel that we have to balance, obviously we have to be in compliance. If there's a King County law, if there's a Washington State law, we have to comply. But it's a balancing act, right? What are we gonna do with all these different, requirements and opportunities? Because we can grow. We can grow in several different ways. We can grow in different places. Just keep that in mind. We did a survey, put a lot of time into that survey to ask very specific questions, and we got hundreds of answers. And the people said they like Newcastle the way it is in terms of being small and safe and quiet. I ask you to keep that in mind. And again, thank you for all your hard work. Good luck.
Thank you, Jim. Would anyone else like to make a comment at this point? Okay,
Charlie, just to clarify, so you have a gentleman over here, I can't remember his name, Tyler. Tyler's gonna do a presentation on 116 on the whole middle house code, okay. So would we be better off to save our comments till after he's kind of, would that make more sense?
Yeah,
Tyler?
yeah, I think so.
Okay, do a good job then.
okay, we'll close the public comment period and move to commissioner comments. Would let's just let anybody who wants to go first make a comment. And
First off, comp plan got approved. Yay! It seemed like we worked on that thing forever. 2 years felt like 10. But yeah, it got approved, so awesome. And then the town hall, I thought that was a great town hall. It was really well attended. I thought the questions were good. It was, fairly civil, if you will. Not a lot of controversial stuff. And I don't know the magic on why one town hall is that well attended. I mean, I was pulling out chairs there at the beginning from the custodian just to get people seats versus another town hall where it's not as well attended. So I don't know the magic there, but however that works, that was great. I'd like to see all of them that well attended. So, thank you.
Hi, friends, it's always good to be here with you guys. Glad to be here. And for the people in those seats where I used to sit so diligently and faithfully, I'm glad to see you guys there too, because it's not always like that. We appreciate you coming, and I'm looking forward to what you have to say.
Very quickly, I'll probably echo the same sentiments. Thank you, the residents of Newcastle. It's unbelievable. It's such a small city, and yet the level of engagement that I see all of you guys coming here every Wednesday, the fourth Wednesday, and sitting through we have very long meetings. They last sometimes 3 to 4 hours. And for you to have that patience just because you want your voices heard, really thank you. You make us a better version of ourselves just because we serve you. So thank you.
okay, that concludes commissioner comments. We'll go to reports. The chair does not have a report. Director Fitzgibbons, what would you like to say?
Okay, this is just sort of an update. For our June meeting, we're going to talk about an introduction to our critical areas ordinance. This is the update for our environmental regulations. We'll also be looking at any zoning map updates. Staff would like to have a discussion on future meeting items. We already have small cells that we need to finish up this fall, but we could work on additional items and start planning items into the next year. Staff have found out today that we need to update our sign code again based on new case law or new interpretations of case law. We need to update our downtown development code to make it more objective. There's a new lot splitting bill that was approved, so we're going to have to make an administrative process for allowing lots to be split in half. And so we'll be talking about that a little bit more. And then I have a few updates from commission members that we've already talked about, including tiny houses on wheels, boarding houses, or bed and breakfasts. And if there are other ideas, I would love to have you email me directly, and I'll capture those if you email them by June 8th. And then I will take them to Len and Charlie, and we'll talk about how to do the discussion at our next agenda setting meeting. That works. And I can provide, at the June meeting, in line with the lot splitting bill, I can provide some other updates on the legislative session and how that's going to affect us. That's all I got.
Thank you. That brings us to the public hearing, which is on the general topic of middle housing. We'll cover, among other things, the rules covering accessory dwelling units, unit lot subdivision, housing for homeless people or people in transition, possible density changes on some of our arterials. So this is, we'll start with Associate Planner Tyler Coyle to give us a short overview. After that overview, he will be available for questions or comments from us, and then we will take public testimony. And for members of the public, if you're here to address the commission, it isn't necessary that you be a proponent or an opponent. You can just come forward, give your name and address for the record. If your comments are in the form of a question, we'll note the question and we'll answer it if we can at the conclusion of the public hearing. So it's not a format where we have an interchange with the speaker at the podium. Any questions from commissioners? Okay. Mr. Coyle, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. All right, everyone. So I will get in here and try to make my comments brief while covering the important things. So little plan for the evening here. Thank you. Always forget to do that. So we'll start by discussing a little bit about the state laws and their requirements. Briefer than in past meetings because we've said it a few times at this point, and we want to focus primarily on what's changed since the April draft of the code, and to specifically zero in on a discussion on options for setbacks when ADUs are involved and affordable housing provisions. And once I've teed up that discussion, then we'll close that here and get on to the public comments, and then move from there. I will say that staff is hoping that commission could take action at the end of this meeting, whether that would be to send it as written or with changes. Either is obviously fine, but we would prefer to have some kind of action taken at the end of this meeting. So the new state laws and actions, these are all state laws. HB 1110 and 2123 are the middle housing laws that requires cities of Newcastle's size to allow duplexes, includes language limiting on how we can regulate middle housing, with the big one as far as the code update is concerned being that they can't have more onerous regulations, especially on design, than what's required to build single-family detached houses. We also need to adopt a unit lot subdivision process, which is where you can essentially, if you have one piece of land and you build a duplex on it, rather than having the sides of the duplex be condo, you could draw a property line between them essentially and have two fee simple lots. It doesn't let you build more housing like a traditional subdivision, but it lets you change how the ownership structure works. Then there's HB 1337, which is the ADU legislation. We'll need to allow up to 2 ADUs built per lot on single-family zones. They need to be saleable. We're no longer allowed to require that the owner lives on site. Then there's HB 1220. That that covered a lot of things, but for what matters for this update is that shelters, transitional housing, emergency housing, and permanent supportive housing, or STEP housing, has to be allowed without a conditional use permit. And so then there's HB 1998, cities must allow co-living in multifamily zones, essentially. So that could be traditional multifamily zones, or also like your more dense mixed-use zones. And essentially all of this will come into force in July. And the Middle Housing Code and ADU specifically will start to override city code at that point unless we update our code to come into compliance. And so it would be preferred to move, at least on those aspects of the legislation, to move quicker, or at least by July. So last meeting, I came up here and mentioned how the Department of Commerce had no comments. That turned out to be a clerical error on their part. They said, we're sorry, we actually did have comments, and we didn't say that correctly the first time. So we went through their comments. They're in one of the agenda's exhibits specifically, or with an overview comment by comment of what they were and how they were addressed. But these were the general buckets of their comments. And so you had requests for more information and requests that resulted in no changes or withdrawn. There were some points where they thought maybe there needed to be changes, but after getting more context, pulled back. So then there was moving the design standards from the Middle Housing Code to the General Housing Design Standards. We knew that any design standards for middle housing needed to, or were going to legally affect single-family housing as well, which is, and so this isn't changing anything as far as our expectations, but it did make us move a piece from 1819 to 1814, specifically the regulation limiting like driveway lot or driveway width on a given lot. The one making it so that a driveway couldn't essentially take up more than 2/3 of the lot width. They advised us to consider restricting the unit lot subdivision process for more than 9 units. Below that, we have to permit them as if it's a short plat. But above that, we have more flexibility, and we're now proposing for those larger developments, to restrict using unit lot subdivision to development, or to planned unit developments and development agreements, with the reason being that the things that you get out of those two permit types are you can cluster your development in exchange, but by meeting certain conditions. If you just allowed unit lot subdivision, you could keep one big piece of land and do the clustering but without meeting the conditions. So we didn't want to open the door to that. So now those two processes would be tied together. We can talk more about that later if you'd like. And then the other thing was permitting step housing in the limited open space zone with, at first it seemed like they were going to request that we permit it outright. And it turns out, after talking with them, that it will only have to be permitted to the same extent that we permit that hotels are already allowed in that zone. The state law requires you to allow that step housing in any zone where hotels are allowed. We allow hotels there with a conditional use permit, and so we will only have to allow them with or step housing there with a conditional use permit. So it will still be, it'll still be substantially restricted in that zone.
Tyler, do you want questions now, or do you want us to hold them till the end?
I could take them now. Either way would be fine, really.
So I have a question about this thing you were just talking about, and for the benefit of our people who haven't been following this, the LOS zone is the limited open space zone. It's like the golf course. And sometime in the last year or so, the city made it allowable for the golf course to build a boutique hotel on their property. And So we didn't, that meant, because of this new state law, that if we were going to allow a hotel there, that means this step housing we couldn't restrict it anywhere in that limited open space zone, which is not what is really intended by the state law and not what we intended by making the hotel option available to the golf course. So my question for you is, does our current process at city and the conditional use process allow us now to treat a application for a hotel at the golf course differently from step housing in the limited open space zone?
So it wouldn't allow us to treat an application for a hotel differently from an application for step housing. But the nice thing here is that the conditional use permit is a very restricted permit that review on it happens a little bit more on a case-by-case basis. It's not the same as like applying for a building permit where you apply it, you check the boxes, and you're going to get your permit. And so having that conditional use on it kind of gives the city more leeway to say no when when the land is not a fit for the given use, which is important in this case because limited open space, as you mentioned, is consisting of an active golf course, and there's some park spaces and a lot of open spaces in critical areas. So it's not really, it's not a zone that's meant to hold a lot of development in general. And step housing in particular is probably not a great fit for it. And so in this case, we'll be doing the minimum required by the state. And with the minimum being a conditional use permit, though, I think we'll still have substantial ability to restrict it in that area. It could be something that would be worth looking into in the future to find a way to limit the ability to build a hotel more explicitly to the golf course itself, and then have it not apply to the rest of the LOS zone, then pulling the step housing entirely out of the question there.
I would like to do that, and maybe we can add that to our list of things to talk about for the rest of the year.
Sure.
Commissioner Van Natten?
Yeah, Tyler. So the unit lot subdivision, that was the process that was gonna allow us to like split a duplex into two fee simple, or
Yes.
carve off an ADU kind of thing?
Yes.
Off the parent lot? But with the 9 or more units, is that now not possible?
Oh, well, I don't think that it's going to make much of a change on the ground for how that policy would work, because anything below 9 units will work exactly as we talked about.
Oh, it would.
It's just for when you'd have a development with more than nine units going in. So imagine you have one really large piece of land, like at the Lee Barma property, for example. And rather than doing a subdivision, they said, well, I can get this, I get like X amount of density on the lot, and I want to do that whole thing in a unit lot subdivision, rather than a traditional subdivision. They could do things with the site layout that either our subdivision code wouldn't allow them, or that would be doing things like putting the houses really close to each other and then leaving open space in the rest of the site. Is not necessarily a bad thing, but our planned unit development process is really meant to regulate that, or when a developer wants to get really creative. We have development agreements with the city. Those are really the two best vehicles for that kind of creativity. And so we don't want to make a situation where somebody uses a unit lot subdivision to kind of do like a fly-by-night PUD.
Yeah,
So
that makes
we're tying
sense.
them
I
together.
just didn't want to rule out, we could have 2 owners of a duplex, for example.
No, that's certainly still on the table.
Okay.
All right. So, one of the questions that we really want to get some kind of resolution on tonight is setback options for ADUs. So in the draft code right now, we actually have 2 options in the draft code. So if you were to just accept it, we would be taking in the draft code as is, we'd be taking in a contradiction. So in option 1, we have minimum rear setbacks are reduced to 10 feet for ADUs when one or more will be on the lot. And option 2 is the same, but for a 5-foot rear yard setback. It's worth noting that the current rear setback is 20 feet. The staff's original recommendation was for a 15-foot setback, but there was a preference at the last meeting to look at a 10 and a 5. And so we actually, oh, and I should mention also that we want to, and this is borrowing from the City of Tacoma's work on ADUs, but to limit the rear windows on the second floor of ADUs that are closer than 15 feet to a semi-translucent glass, or with the policy objective there being that light could come through, but not clarity. And so we actually went in, Aaron went into SketchUp and modeled this out. So this is a kind of a, SketchUp is a basic rendering site that can let you see things at scale. So on the left, these are modeled to be 6,000 square foot. What?
I see the same thing that is facing the audience. Oh, okay.
Oh, there we are. That's odd. So this is to scale. On the left would be 6,000 square foot lots, which is the minimum lot size for the R6 zone. And then on the right are 10,000 square foot lots, which you, that's not the minimum lot size for either the R4 or the R6 zone. But you do see a lot of lots in Newcastle that just happen to be around this size, especially lots that were built in the 60s and 70s. This, you see this happen a lot more. So we wanted to show both layouts. And in this kind of salmon color here, it's with the 20-foot setback, and then the yellows are ADUs with 10-foot setback, and the blues are 5-foot setback. And when we did this, one thing that we noticed is actually that maybe putting it further back does carry, towards the back lot line does carry some extra advantage. And the reason that staff are thinking this now is that if you put it more in the middle of the yard, you end up with these two very small spaces that aren't really usable for much of anything. And then as the ADU goes further to the back of the lot, you start to regain a yard and something that's almost like a courtyard between the ADU and the main unit, which we thought was just probably a more pleasant, more usable space for both the ADU and the main residence occupant. And then with the 5-foot setback, if you had ADUs on 5 foot on either side, well, we have lots of developments where single-family home side setbacks are that distance, and it works. And ADUs would have a reduced height limit of 24 feet. And so we think, at this point, it's staff's opinion that the benefits of putting the ADU closer to the rear lot line probably outweigh the costs. But that is just staff's opinion. I think you could have a reasonable disagreement about it. So that is one thing that we'll be asking you guys to weigh in on here. And
Commissioner Blacker?
Excuse me, would outweigh the costs. What are you saying as costs?
Well, I just mean that the cost, I should put costs in quotes because it's not really a monetary thing, but when you put the ADU closer to the back lot line, you are impinging on like what the person in the lot behind it sees. And while we think that the amount of that kind of infringement is manageable because of the reduced height on the ADUs, and with the semi-translucent glass, it's still something to consider. So that's what I mean when I say costs. Okay. So,
Sorry, we have a question for Vice Chair Troutman.
Excuse me, Tyler. As I understand it, the staff is in favor of reducing the setbacks, and you've given us potential options of 5 feet or 10 feet. Is there, of those two options, does the staff have a lean one way or the other with their recommendation?
yeah, so at this point, we're leaning towards the 5-foot option, which I actually wasn't thinking of when we started this, but when we modeled it out, it started to look like the better one to us. So now for affordable housing, I should note that while the middle housing and the ADUs are largely coming from state requirements, the affordable housing is just an opportunity. There are no state requirements for it, and so we have maximum flexibility. We've talked about this a fair bit in other meetings, so I'll just get into the specifics. One of them is one of the two policies that we have or have proposed here would be what I've termed the 10% policy, just in this slideshow. And that will be essentially the same as what we mentioned last meeting. But to reiterate, it would be developers take 10% of all units, 10% of units in all proposed developments with 4 or more units in them, and 4 or more units where each unit is larger than 1,600 square feet, and would make 10% of that would have to be held for or made affordable to owner households that make 80% of the area median income, or renters making 70%. And when you multiply the number of houses they propose by 10%, you get percentages under 0.66 can be optionally built on site, or with a fee in lieu, which we're proposing to be $13 a square foot. And then for decimals 0.66 and up, you could either do a fee in lieu payment at the same rate, or have a dedicated accessory dwelling unit as affordable. And then any time that 10% crosses a whole number, it would have to be one house built on site. And you would not have the fee in lieu option in that case. So if you had a 50-unit development, that would be 5 units on site. And then, as I mentioned earlier, units smaller than 1,600 square feet and developments totaled less than 4 units would be exempt from this.
Before we move forward, I just want to say a little bit more about what you just said for the benefit of the people who weren't here the last couple of meetings. The previous policy is a way to create some housing, some very small amount of housing that would be more affordable than the market housing. It's only a little bit more affordable because the 80% of the income level means 80% of basically $160,000. So it's for people who are making $140,000. It's for people who are teachers and firefighters, but it's not low income housing. It is just something that's a little more affordable. And the complicated formula that Tyler described basically says that if you're building 10 units, one of those units you have to have one of those units on site that is affordable at that level. But if you're making less, then you're basically charged a fee that goes into a fund that would be used elsewhere to help finance affordable housing. So you pay one way or another, but this fee option is a way of generating some money that would go. In our case, we work with a nonprofit agency that works with East Side cities and helps coordinate developments that are affordable. And it would go to a fund that would be spent in Newcastle, but with that agency pooling those funds to make it into something that people can actually live in. Commissioner Blocker.
Tyler, you mentioned if someone was building a 50-unit complex, but you also mentioned just before that, I think, ADUs associated with them. So if they're building a 50-unit apartment complex or whatever, could they put their 5 affordable units as ADUs on that property?
No, those would need to be full-size houses. The ADU option would only work, so say they were required, it wasn't a 50-unit development, but say somebody's required to build like 4.75 units of affordable housing. You'd have to build 4 on-site, and then for the 0.75, you'd have the choice of either paying an in lieu fee or doing an ADU for that 0.75's worth, and that would be up to the developer.
Let's proceed.
All right, so the other discrete affordable housing policy that we're proposing is townhouse density bonus options. So this would be, I'll go to the next slide here because it's just a picture. For arterial and collector streets around the city, as well as May Valley Road and Southeast May Creek Park Drive, and also Southeast 95th Street or 95th Way, we would allow, and rather than just the duplexes that will be allowed everywhere, we will allow 3-unit townhouses on the lots directly fronting those streets in exchange for one of the lots being affordable. So that could be at 90% of the area median income. We've also heard 80% as an option. We can go either way as the Planning Commission prefers on the level of affordability that we would require out of the one affordable unit. Then we have another option for the same kind of policy, and that would be that you could either do the 3 units or you could do a 4th unit on the site, and in exchange for that extra unit, the affordable unit would have to essentially be priced lower. So if it was 90% of, or if they, in the 3-unit option, you had a house priced at 90% of area median income, then for a 4-unit one, you would have the house priced, or the affordable unit priced at 80%. But the idea being that the extra unit makes it a little bit more likely to pencil out for the developer while also getting a little bit more affordability back for the city. So similar to the rear setback, the way it is in the draft code, this has essentially the draft code is written with both options in place right now. And so we will need to choose a combination of one or the other or neither, so that it doesn't move on with a contradiction in it. So I think these two might be big discussion points through the night. And I've set them up, we've set them up this way to start discussion, but we can kind of go where the discussion goes. If that makes sense.
Is there more to your presentation?
Just a little bit.
Okay. Are there any questions on this particular one before we? Yes, Vice Chair Troutman.
Do you or staff have some sort of a guesstimate of how many developable sites are on these arterial roads?
So we haven't estimated it. I would think, we would need to go back and look at it more to give you something more than just a guesstimate.
Well, do you think it's a
because-
lot or minimal?
I think it'll probably be on the lower side in terms of the actual number of lots. There are a lot of lots along these arterials right now that have already been redeveloped, in some way, shape, or form. Some of them also have critical areas that run near them. You think of like Newcastle Golf Club Road, for example, as part of this policy, but there's not that much developable land around it. So I think you probably see the most along possibly 116th, Southeast May Creek Park Drive, and Lake Washington Boulevard would be what my gut would tell me. And another kind of asterisk here is that we would only require these where the houses have sewer connections, or at least the developer, builds out those sewer connections with the houses. And so there are some places along like May Creek Park Drive, for example, that look buildable but might not pencil. So I'd say it's kind of a low to medium number of parcels.
To put it in my question is if there's not a lot of these things that will come to pass, are we spending a lot of time on something that you don't see will be fully utilized? And along with that, by definition, these are arterials. They're the heaviest traffic streets in the city. And I wonder what you'd comment on the impacts to traffic, adding, like, for instance, a fourplex coming off of any of these places, but a fourplex that fronted Coal Creek Parkway and the traffic implications that might have.
Can I answer that? So in terms of traffic impacts, in terms of urban design, when you have something, if you were to have something like a townhome, which again, remember that the city already has to allow a single-family home and 2 ADUs, and those ADUs can be attached or detached. So we're already allowing 3 units per lot. And so when you have, a decent amount of density along a more highly traveled corridor, that creates visual friction and actually does tend to slow people down. So in terms of something like having townhomes within that corridor, which is also designed to and planned to hold more traffic than other areas in the city, I would say that's actually a benefit to looking at these corridors in collector streets in particular. And in terms of who would be using this and how many people would actually be using this, one of the things we're talking about is whether we do 3 or 4, and the reason for that is that at the 4 home level, that's what the ARCH study showed was actually something that developers could do and provide affordable housing. So that's where that idea came from. At the 3 level, I would have less confidence that those are going to get built. If we allow it in the code, whether it gets built or not, it's another incentive that we would be able to say, hey, we've got this option for you to build an affordable housing, more affordable housing. Again, this is workforce housing. We're not looking at anything below 80% income.
I would put one addendum on that as far as it being worth it goes. I think, it's true that we're not going to get, like 500 units of housing out of this or something, but for this policy would, if it were used, would produce affordable housing kind of more efficiently, you could say, than the other affordable housing policy. In the other one, you might need a 50-unit development to get those 5 affordable units on site. Where this one, you could have five lots around the city get developed, and now we've equaled the amount of affordable housing that 50-unit development was going to provide. And so it has, like pound for pound, it probably has a little more impact. And then if it's not used so much, then it doesn't really cost the city anything to have it on its books. It just sits there as letters on a page. And so I think that the costs of it are pretty negligible.
Commissioner Lowe?
Yes, Tyler, I know we are talking about those affordable housing solutions, and I want to know, do you have any facts, historical data from Arch in terms of whether the increased density actually helped affordability for that area? Meaning, I mean, if you, for a city of Newcastle, somehow doing this, and I mean, Newcastle is not a good example because we're really talking on the paper, but I'm just wondering if there is any city doing that and they see the housing becomes more affordable to the people, because I haven't seen any concrete evidence. And actually I have a very recent example from Seattle, Queen Anne area, and they had that particular case, they have 4 townhomes in a unit built about 10, 15 years ago. And at that time, the house, all those condos, townhome style houses sold at below 500,000, and it's small. It's about 400 square feet per square feet. And recently, one unit got sold, and it was sold at $1.14 million, all cash, and it turned out to be $823 per square feet. That's not affordable. I mean, I don't really know how actually we will see increased density making affordable solutions.
So I will say that the idea of a 400 square foot townhouse fetching a 1.1 million price seems pretty extreme. I will say that Queen Anne is a bit of an extreme place in that regard, but I think that I also kind of hear 2 arguments here. So one of them is, or I get, the affordable housing policies that we're talking about here are not going to juice the number of houses that are built in the city. They will take a small number of them and carve them out as essentially protected, like you could say like deed restricted to be affordable housing. So it won't make very many units, but the ones that it does make will be guaranteed to stay that way. On the other side, the state's middle housing and ADU policies really are supply bills. They are meant to increase the volume of production, not just in Newcastle, and actually primarily not in Newcastle, primarily in the state's larger cities in this region. And the point there would be to lower the temperature of the market around the region over time. So as for whether or not that can work, I would say that it would probably over time have an effect of causing prices to level out more so than decline. And then you would see some moderate declines in price per house around the region a little bit faster in places where the actual amount of land being bought goes down. And generally, the amount of land per house goes down because land is such an expensive part of making the houses. These kinds of policies tend to work slowly and they have diffuse effects. The best examples I've seen of something like this working over time actually is probably Houston, Texas. But it's almost a different conversation from talking about these affordable housing policies, because these affordable housing policies are not built on making housing affordable through boosting design. The affordable housing policies that are trying to, or the state policies that are trying to make it more affordable over time by boosting supply are the ones that we really have mandates on. And so that debate about whether or not they help kind of is almost out of our hands. I will say, just as a planner, that I think that it will have an impact over time, but it won't primarily because of Newcastle's bills or Newcastle's reforms. It will be the whole region moving at once, and most impactfully, Seattle, Bellevue, Kirkland, Redmond. You're going to see, and maybe Shoreline. You're going to see a lot more volume coming out of those jurisdictions in particular, and at different sizes. And the more these policies work better, the more area they cover. And so because it's essentially a regional policy, the odds that it has an impact over time, I think, are actually quite high. But it's hard standing where we are to say exactly where they're going to get. And also, I don't have the power to change the state laws on this. So I should probably just stop.
Commissioner Blocker.
I liked your statement. I think some of these are just going to end up being words on the page. It's not going to be something, for instance, the 4-unit versus the 3-unit along the arterials are probably not going to be of a significant impact, just my opinion. Could you clarify for me on the map right in front of you? Is the dashed line, the lower right dashed line, is that May Valley Road?
Yeah, the one heading towards Cougar Mountain
Yes,
on the south
heading
side,
east,
that's
yeah.
May Valley, yeah.
That is May Valley Road.
Mhm.
Is May Valley Road Newcastle or county? Or Renton?
The road itself,
The road itself is
it's
Renton,
Renton, I think.
but it's fronted by Newcastle properties.
Yeah.
So what did the road end up being?
Well, the road itself is in the city of Renton, but immediately on the northern edge of the road is where Newcastle starts.
Okay.
So parcels on the north side of the road are in our city, and the ones on the south side are in Renton.
The pavement is Renton,
The pavement itself is Renton, yes.
just like the pavement on Newcastle Way is Newcastle.
Exactly. Yeah, it's that situation in reverse.
Actually, on Newcastle Way, it goes all the way to the fence line.
Well, I guess that's true.
The fence line, at the fence line is, fence line north, yep.
Yeah.
Commissioner Van Atta.
Somewhere in the updates, there's a use table, which
Mhm.
I don't have in front of me. But aren't we allowing townhomes in like R6? Or no? Where'd that land?
So an R6, we wouldn't allow them outright. I think we would, the way it's proposed now would be to allow them either through this policy, and again, if we didn't go through with this policy, that would change in the use table as well, or as a conditional use permit. And the reason that we're showing them being allowed with a conditional use permit is that today, in fact, since 2013, multifamily housing has been allowed in that zone with a conditional use permit. And so we're just matching that housing type to what was already allowed, essentially.
Okay, that's what I'm thinking of.
Yeah.
Okay. And then my second question is I thought somewhere in our code that said something about limiting access to Cold Creek Parkway, just like no more driveways, basically. Just because it impedes traffic flow. Am I making that up?
Yes, not no more cuts, but we do try to, as frequently as possible, reduce. Like, so we would hope for like a joint use driveway for any property that fronts it. There aren't that many properties left adjacent to Coal Creek Parkway that would empty out on there. There's maybe one I can think of.
Yeah. I'm thinking of like on Coal Creek where the Be It Tikva sign is. I think if that were to sell, and that's on Coal Creek and 79th, I think, going up the hill,
Yeah.
you would probably want the driveway for the four-person townhome, or even townhome on 79th on Coal Creek, right?
I would think so.
Do they own the property immediately adjacent to Coal Creek Parkway?
Yeah,
I think they're on
Victor's
that corner.
Parkway goes a lot, it goes way down the hill, like
Yeah.
further than you'd think.
Yeah.
I don't know if they could legally split that, because I think some of that, there's a lot of critical areas down there, but saying that, let's
Well,
pretend that they could.
Let's see, I pretend they could.
Pretend that they could.
If the driveway were on that 79th, would this 3 or 4 townhome policy apply, or does the street have to hit Coal Creek Parkway?
So it's a good question, actually, because my thought would be that it would apply so long as the land itself touched Coal Creek Parkway. But if you guys didn't want it to, then it wouldn't.
Well, I think I wanted to, I just was clarifying how it would work.
I think in that case, Public Works would want the driveway to go towards 79th.
Yeah,
Probably where it currently is.
Yeah.
yeah, okay.
So Tyler, I want to follow up on one thing. I think I need some clarification. You mentioned the middle housing, say we ask the developer pay the fee in lieu and will provide affordable housing, and they want it to stay that way. So if the owner who meets those requirements get in this affordable housing unit, and when the time the owner move on is going to sell the house, is it market driven, or I think Arch you need to, but if this is just a regular developer, not Arch, how are we? I mean, is the owner? I mean, it's a supply demand, right? I mean, obviously the person can put whatever price he wants, or there is a limit.
Well, there would be a limit in this case through a covenant on the property, a deed restriction. And that would run with the land. We would have Arch manage it insofar that they keep a record of the deed restriction. But the beauty of the deed restriction is that it kind of manages itself. And that would just go on the title and it would be there permanently, insofar as I know.
So if it's not Arch, it will still have deed restrictions. Is that what you're saying?
Right, if Arch were to, melt down the day after we pass this, then we would, it would still be deed restricted. We would just need to find some other place to essentially track the parcels. But that's totally doable and it wouldn't change the restrictions themselves.
It would probably fall on the city to do that tracking.
I'm just gonna follow up a previously asked question. So the conditional use permit, does that just for R6, can it also apply to R4, for instance? Can it be anywhere, or it's specific?
Well, so the conditional use permit is just another land use process. It doesn't need to fall on any one zone. And the way that we've got it set up for the higher levels of not multifamily, but middle housing, so your quadplexes, your sixplexes, that sort of thing, would be that it'd be a conditional use permit in the R4 and the R6 zone. And it's the only reason we're doing that, again, is that multifamily already has that same setup. And so we're just preserving essentially preserving the ability to do what you could already do in our code. We didn't want to make it so that we were actually further reducing the amount that could be built, just through a writing error, essentially. So multifamily allowed with a CUP, then the higher levels of middle housing also allowed via a CUP only.
Okay, let's see what the end of your presentation is so we can go to the public comments.
Yes, so these are some other changes. Side setbacks proposed to reduce to 10 feet, which would be 5 on either side, when an ADU is on a non-conforming lot platted prior to 2006. That goes back to the discussion we had, I think, the first time we talked about middle house, or the first time we started this. And someone came up with a lot that was very narrow in the front. So this would be kind of the final answer on that question. Then there's the use table changes that we were just talking about, actually, to allow larger forms of middle housing in low-density residential areas with the CUP only, which is, again, just to match what we currently do with multifamily and keep the status quo. Then all city affordable housing incentives are available on lands that are owned by religious institutions, regardless of zone. That's implementing a state requirement. And we decided to tweak the definition of multifamily housing to begin at 7 units, while we saved 2 through 6 units for middle housing, at least for land use purposes. And we just thought that would be a disambiguation in the code for people that would come in and say, I want to build multifamily housing here, but they're really talking about something else. And we just thought it would make the code a little easier to interpret. And yeah, full changes on exhibits 1 and 2, the agenda, but this covers the substance. And then we have a requested action here, which is honestly a little bit, you could say limited, because you guys could change these in any number of ways. But because as the code is drafted, we have 2 options in for the rear yard setbacks for ADUs and for the townhouse density bonus. We really do need a decision made on those. And so we've modeled it up so that you have essentially any combination of those uses. You don't need to say it this way, but these are options. And that is the end of my spiel.
Thank you, Tyler. It's now time for the public hearing. And we have 4 people signed up. If you're going to address the commission, come forward, give your name and just your neighborhood, if you would, not your address. And as I mentioned, if you have questions, we'll try to address them at the close of the public hearing. And first up is Kim Snorsky.
Hi. Just look at the rest of it. Oh, the plans.
Oh, cool. Okay, hi. First time in a meeting here. My name is Kim Snorsky, and I live on 116th Avenue. My husband and I have been residents of Newcastle for more than 35 years. We raised 4 of our children here in Newcastle, and 2 of them have actually moved back to Newcastle, purchased their own home, and are raising their families in Newcastle. So I'm sure you can understand why we don't want to just sell and move out of Newcastle if things change drastically. So over the past 35 years, we've witnessed a lot of changes in our community. The ponies are gone, the open lots and the rural charm is mostly gone. But we've understood that there's a lot of growth, and we haven't opposed too many of those changes. However, having the townhomes on 116th, we are definitely against that. We strongly oppose having townhomes all next to us. I'm sure the developers would love you guys to make this change. In the past month, the number of calls I've received asking if we're willing to sell our home has skyrocketed, and I'm I'm wondering if maybe they're getting a head start on trying to purchase our house and tear it down and make 4 townhomes. There's a lot of single, older homes on 116th, and with this, now this makes the developers competing with families that we might try and purchase those later on. So I think that's gonna make 116th less affordable. We've completely changed the character of our neighborhood. We don't live in a house that is walkable to stores or restaurants. So you really need a car if you're gonna live in our neighborhood. And all of a sudden, you've got, you know, parking and more noise and more traffic along that road. But in a townhome, I don't know, or even people going to visit people in townhomes, where are they gonna park, that kind of stuff. I understand that the state is requiring everyone to make changes, and just asking you, please don't ruin our neighborhood.
Thank you. Next is Mike Snorsky.
Shocker. A lot of information, obviously, to try to decipher. I mean, Travis, Tyler. Thanks for doing such a good job trying to make, could you bring the screen up that shows all the arterials? For you guys, 1/16th is the street right here. So it was recently reduced to 25 miles per hour, which we thought was great, okay, for the families. Because there's a lot of people that walk along those streets. So it's great, but so obviously I'm strongly opposed to it as well. We've been a resident in Newcastle since, you know, before it was Newcastle. It was Renton. That's what our address was. And we thought it would be a better idea to be part of a smaller town, Newcastle, and that's the reason we voted for annexing it where we were, which is Renton, to Newcastle. So, and rather than be a part of a big city like Renton. So this would be basically completely against what we voted for 30 some odd years ago to become Newcastle. We'd rather be part of a small community, safe, you know, quiet, and so we obviously are strongly opposed at turning 116th into a community lined with fourplexes. Let alone turning other areas of Newcastle into the same thing. We don't need such a high-density small town. It's already getting a lot higher density with all the different neighborhoods that are going in. When we first moved there, our neighbors were Yon and Barb Bergman, and so his nickname was Bergie, and he owned Bergie's Tavern down in Boeing. And so I can tell you this, he would be rolling in his grave right now if he knew that 116th was going to be lined with fourplexes. So again, I ask you not, or at least your opinion as you move up the ladder with it, do it someplace else. Thanks.
Thank you. Next is Harvinder Singh.
Hello again. I guess most of you have heard me, and if you guys don't know my background, I am a civil engineer with over 35 years of experience in engineering, planning, design, and construction. So when I see all these options and codes and everything, just my head starts spinning. Have a look at this, have a look at that, and yeah, just seeing what the pitfalls are or how we can do things better. I think one of the things, I did send my comments to you guys this morning, and I think speaking on the same thing. So affordable housing or middle housing, it's just not, that is gonna, you know, one thing or one solution will solve it. So you have to look at it from a bigger, comprehensive viewpoint. And one of the biggest costs, or land cost, will be what the land cost will be, and the construction of a home will be what the construction of a home. So what the city can do is control what it can, and that is the development costs. To build a subdivision or to do a short plat or any of the above. And there are a lot of ways, and one of things that bothered me the most was in the cities, the new comprehensive plan, they said underground overhead utilities throughout the city. And in conversation during the town hall, when I asked, what is your plan for the undergrounding? They had no plan to underground, they had no funding, they had no coordination with Future Sound Energy, they had nothing, and their only thing was, as the developments come in, they will underground it. And from an engineering viewpoint, that is impossible. It cannot happen in my lifetime, okay? It won't happen in Tyler's lifetime, because there are not that many parcels to underground it, and also the cost effectiveness of that is just ridiculous. So you are paying 4 to 5 times more doing, let's say, 100 feet or 200 feet at a time. And, and I said that before, but nobody responded to that. And so I don't know, how did that, from the planning to engineering to the council, how did that got approved? So there is kind of a missing link, I think, somewhere in between there, and I think that is in the engineering side of things. There is some weakness or some lack of engineering vision as, okay, you are giving a proposal to the council to adopt, and council has no clue as to what is right and what is wrong. They are relying on the engineering input and the planner's input, and they will just approve most of the things. But if you look at it, think about it. So I went around my neighborhood asking questions, so what do you think, does this make sense? And I talked to 40, 50 people. 95% were livid with the way the city was doing things, building sidewalks, 100-foot, piecemeal increments, and also undergrounding utilities. They said that's just amazing how the common sense is missing amongst the council and the city staff. And I'm not kidding you, I have the names of the people I talked to, and if you guys want, I think I will be sending it later. So I do like the ADUs, 5-foot offset, and reducing it offset because you have to maximize the density. Land is precious, and adding volume, I think, is one way of having affordable housing over the long term, just because it's a supply and demand thing. Market dictates what the actual cost of the price will be, but what you can do is make more homes available. So the bidding wars, when that happens, they will definitely have an impact. And I also already
We need to
discussed-
wrap it up. Sorry, we're past our 3 minutes.
3 minutes, that's it? You guys talk forever.
Yeah, that's because we're
That's it?
commissioners.
Well, all right then. Thank you.
Yeah. Next is Andy Jacobs.
I promise I won't go over the 3 minutes. Andy Jacobs, I'm a 30-plus year resident of Olympus. I just want to mention to everybody here, Jim Quigg, who spoke earlier, is a current city council member, offering some opinions about what the commission should do or shouldn't do, just as a point of reference. I know he has that, apparently has that ability to do that. I have a couple questions. The survey that he referenced in his speech, does everybody on the commission, have they seen that? Do they know what that is? Are those factual?
Well, let's answer after the comment.
My next question is, can you define small according to the commission? Apparently that word has been used somewhat this evening. Is there a definition to that word from the commission? And then I just want to say, look, when I moved in, Newcastle was different than it is today. It's going to continue to grow and be different in the future. Businesses in this community need the density to survive. So just keep that in mind as you guys are looking at what the commission's going to propose to the city council.
Thank you. That's everyone who has signed up. So if nobody else wishes to speak, we'll close this portion of the public hearing. Okay? That portion is closed. And now we can, staff and commissioners can respond to some of the points and the questions that were raised. Let me begin by answering the question about the survey and the small. I think only 3 of the commissioners here were on the commission when the survey was conducted. That was Commissioner Lowe, Commissioner Van Natta, and myself. It was a survey sent out by mail to, I think it went to everybody in the city.
There was a notification sent through postcards, and then we posted it online, but it was not a statistically valid survey.
Well, it was.
No, it wasn't. No, we didn't base it on statistics.
Go ahead.
Yeah, no, we didn't base it. It would not, it's not considered statistically valid.
Okay, well, we could argue that, but everybody in the city that received a postcard had an opportunity to respond to it. We got about 500 responses. And those questions didn't ask people, do you want this to be a small city? There's no definition for the word small. There was, from the responses to that survey and to the comments that commissioners received in other kinds of outreach, we held 2 significant public meetings where we publicized people that come in to the Risden School and look at display boards and talk about it. And we attended all of the public events for probably 6 months. The art fair, we were at the concerts at the park with a booth, trying to find out what people thought. And I think Jim accurately captured that most people want Newcastle to stay as it is. The survey didn't exactly say that. I don't think there was a question that said that. There was a question that said, do you I don't remember the wording, but it was essentially, do you want, I guess it was a question, in terms of the development density, do you want things to stay as it is? And about 40% said yes, and about 40% also said, I would be in favor of exploring some higher density alternatives. So the city was, there wasn't a majority on either side of that question, but there's so that's what the survey has told us. Other commissioners? Commissioner Lowe?
Yeah, I will also add,
Would you bring your mic closer to your mouth?
yeah, so just as Charlie said, it's not a question ask people, do you want a city to be small? I think the consultant used basically the word crowd techniques, basically is saying in the comment, which word used the most often? And small, quiet, and safe. That's basically is the most used word to describe what you want Newcastle to be. Mm-hmm. And there is no definition in terms of small. My kind of, I guess, definition is when we are doing the plan, we need to be in compliance with the state laws, and Newcastle is a tier 3 cities, right? Tier 3 cities, which is the population less than 25,000. So our population is 13,000 and 15,000 now. So we'll consider, tier 3 is already the lowest, so I will consider us small.
That was an interesting survey, and sorry, not to argue with our chair, but our statistically valid survey, it wasn't actually, we didn't identify certain population groups and make sure that we got responsive from certain populations, which is what we do with our community-wide survey that we send out. It's not targeted in any way. I would just add, I was actually looking at the materials, and Commissioner Lowe is correct that it was a word cloud that was filled, and people actually just filled in the blank, and the 3 biggest words that you see are small and safe and quiet, amongst a bunch of other words. But you also see responses to other questions, like how many people responded to the question, keep Newcastle at the minimum number of units per lot, and that was 179 people, and 173 people responded that we should allow townhomes. Some people responded that they thought that we should allow townhomes on the periphery. Some people said that we should have
I think most people said the density should be downtown, but then, like Chair Godzik said, there were also people who thought we should bring it out into the neighborhoods. So there were a lot of interesting responses on that, and the information can be found in the Planning Commission notes, the Planning Commission files from the, I think it was the first February meeting in 2024.
Did we answer, Andy Jacobs, did we answer your questions? We did, okay. We didn't leave any out.
Could I add something, please?
Yes, please.
People think I rock the boat, and it's not on purpose, and I hopefully don't rock the boat, but I heard that for the first time that the survey was not statistically valid. Well, the people who care enough to answer those surveys can't be totally discounted. These surveys get discounted when they don't come up with the answers that people are looking for sometimes. So I'd like you to keep that in mind. I think that just saying that, all these people who responded, their opinion doesn't count. That's what it seems to be saying, and I totally disagree with that. In terms of definition of small, a lot of people referred to that they wanted small, and I took it for granted that they had just assumed that Newcastle, as it was at that time, and pretty much still is, that small was status quo, the way that I understood it. And I mean, you guys know that I talk to everybody, I can't shut up. So, and it's somewhat confirmed by, well, my predecessor, Jim Quigg, came in, said small, safe. Kim and Mike Schnorsky are kind of opposed to this development, and the overall feeling that I'm getting from my neighborhood think tank is my goodness, you guys just got the comp plan passed, and I mean, the ink's still wet on the comp plan, and the things that we're talking about right now are not necessarily required, they're optional. And people are thinking, well, what's the hurry to all of a sudden, jump in and do a bunch of additional changes to something that isn't required. And I'm just passing that along, that's what I heard from the people. So, and I can understand their argument. But small, safe, quiet, that's the way people like things. I'm a get off my lawn kind of guy. I like things the way they were. I hate change. But I understand that you've got to make certain accommodations. But when people like the Snorskys come and give their opinion, I think it's exceptionally important and valid. I'm kind of wandering around here a little bit because I hadn't planned on jumping in here, but I'd just ask us to kind of think about the fact that, that small, safe, quiet keeps coming up. These elements that we're talking about are, for the most part, optional. The stuff that's required by law, we're going to do that. We're just stuck with that. But the fact that we're given a choice right now, just keep that in mind. It's not necessarily required that we jump into this right now. And I'm passing on what the people think, and that's pretty much what I care about, is what the people think.
Okay, I think, well, let me just ask, do any commissioners have other questions for staff about the presentation or about anything we've talked about? Because I think what we'll do next is take some votes on some of these particular choices, and so we can give them some clear direction. Go ahead.
I have one quick question, Tyler or Director Fitzgibbons can probably answer this. In the past, we've always heard that our money, the city contributes a significant amount of money to Arch, and then of course these in lieu affordable housing fees go towards Arch. And most of that money's not spent in Newcastle, and I don't necessarily have a problem with that because it keeps Newcastle smaller. But apparently there's some sort of a point system that people keep saying, well, we get credit for the money that we turned over, but there doesn't seem to be, the last 2 times I've spoken with Arch at the commission and at the council, there doesn't seem to be a tracking system or any accountability for where that money goes. Is that something that you can tell us about?
So we can track where the dollars go. There's a new state requirement that we have to report out on our housing numbers and our update. So in 2029, we have to respond to the state on our progress on our comp plan. And so, of course, one of our comp plan policies is to bring more affordable housing. So we will get credit for the monies that we have provided to the Housing Trust Fund, which this year was $13,000. And so just those additional funds will then also go to Arch, but we can stipulate where they're spent. They can be spent locally.
So I didn't see any mention about a stipulation in the housing code that we're about to pass. Where would that, because I think we all want that stipulation.
Yeah. That would be part of, it doesn't need to be in the ordinance itself. That would be part of our policy with Arch under how we want the money spent.
Okay, so I think let's start with the townhome question. Let's vote on that. And this is a preliminary vote. I'd say we're not choosing A through F. Let's just get a sense on from the commission about whether they favor a townhome option. Commissioners, are you okay with that? And then we can see if there's more in that. Okay, so
Do you want me to just do a call like they do in council? Would that be helpful?
yes, but does anybody want to? So this isn't a motion. I guess we're not doing a motion.
No.
Does anybody want to say anything before we vote? Commissioner Blocker.
I'd like to ask a question. So in each of the options that are on before us here, where it says townhomes, in each case, we're talking about a 3 or a 4-unit townhome along the arterials that we've been talking about.
Right.
Some of our guests spoke against it tonight.
Right.
Right.
Commissioner Lowe.
Yeah, I'm not sure if I'm allowed to say something when I'm voting or.
Yes,
yeah.
yes, you are.
Okay.
Well, I mean,
I just want to know when you said we will be voting, am I just say yeah or nay, or I can just talk a little bit about my thought process?
if you want to say anything about your vote before you vote, why don't you do it now?
Okay. Yeah, so I do want to get some of my thoughts out there. I will say I also support growth, and I also feel the affordable housing is very important to our community. But I'm also thinking as commissioners, we need to take the responsibility to plan growth very carefully. And I feel it's prudent to think about some unintentional consequence or lose our neighborhood character we treasure, and people who chose Newcastle and those kind of things, they still treasure. And I do think we need to take that for consideration. And also I feel when we think about affordability solutions, probably we need to think broader, not fully focused on increased density. Just very recently, I think last week, on Wall Street Journal, there's an article about overall American housing size is shrinking, but the housing affordability is not changing. Reason really is, I think several people already touched, land is very expensive. Development is expensive. It takes a similar amount of money to get a permit for 1,400 square feet or for 2,000 square feet. And I just think when we think of affordability housing, we probably need to think of other solutions, broader solutions, tools we can use, not fully focused on increase the density. I mean, City of Seattle already allowed 4 units in single families lot, and now they're pushing 6 because it's still not affordable. But keep doing the same thing. I guess there is a saying, what's the definition of that? But what I'm just trying to say is I want us to take the, consider people's preference, people who live in Newcastle for so many years, and also think about the future when we plan, and think of some of the consequences. I do also want to echo, we just finished the plan and got approved, and I think we probably take one step at a time and not rush into something.
I want to say a few things, but I want to give the other commissioners the opportunity. Anybody else want to say anything before we have a vote?
When we were talking about 5-foot versus 10-foot setbacks and shaded windows and whatnot, that if that was to come to pass, those are good things to consider, and I wouldn't rule them out for, down the line after we've had a little bit more time to get the public feedback and whatnot. Commissioner Van Atta sent us a bunch of really cool stuff from the city of Tacoma. There's a lot of good ideas in there if we're going to do it. Anybody want to guess whether I think we want to do it or not? That's up to you. But I don't think that, we've had 2 or 3 meetings about this, and this is a big step. You're going to ruin somebody's boulevard. 116th, by the way, has 2 schools on it, too. And it doesn't make any difference what kind of additional housing you put in there, I guess. But if you put a 4-plex in, it seems to me you're going to get more cars than you would if it was like a single unit lot. And so the traffic might increase on that. And I'm particularly concerned with the school areas because there weren't a lot of sidewalks there when my kid went there, and I don't think that there's been too many changes to that. So I'd like us to keep in mind that for the arterials, and particularly 116th, there are schools to take into consideration. So you guys probably thought of that already, but it's important to me. So thanks for listening.
I initially was very supportive of this townhome option because I thought it might be that townhomes on these arterials might be a place where they wouldn't change the character of the neighborhood. We heard pretty consistently at all of our public output events that most people wanted us to follow the state minimum, but not to go further in this first step. And there, in the existing comprehensive plan and in our ordinances, there's a lot of potential for growth to be focused downtown. If the 2 shopping centers are ever redeveloped, a developer there could put in retail on the bottom and 4 stories of housing on top. And that is really where, if Newcastle is going to absorb much population, that's where it's going to go. But it didn't have to be the only place it would go. And if there was going to be another place, I was hopeful that there would be a place where it wouldn't take away the neighborhood character. So from what we've heard tonight and in my own outreach, I know 3 people who live on these arterials, and I talked to all 3 of them, and 1 was in favor, 2 were opposed to it. So I think I'm going to be voting against it. So with that, let's just take a show of hands, and then who favors pursuing the townhome
Chair
concept?
Gatzik, we do need to close the public hearing.
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought I closed it before, but I'll formally close it now. Yes, thank you. So who, do you have questions, Commissioner
I
Walker?
do, because Tyler did a really nice job of laying out A through F here.
Well, we're going to do a vote on A through F, but I thought we would speed things if we could
But
eliminate.
in each case, nearly, we have townhouses added on. So I, for instance, will say, in terms of ADUs on existing lots, I'm very much in favor of the 5-foot setback.
Well, let's save that. We're going to talk about that separately. Yeah.
Right, but that would have just.
We're not voting on the A through F. We will vote on A through F, but we'll,
But I'm saying you've got everything connected with the townhome.
no, there's 2 options that have no townhome. Yeah, okay. So let's just say who favors the townhome option at this point? Okay, nobody does. So that takes that off the table. And now let's talk about setbacks. And let me just open the floor to commissioners who would like to voice an opinion on these options.
What's the current setback now, 15 feet?
20.
20? Okay. If we want ADUs to be provided, people have an opportunity to put ADUs in, 20 feet is a big chunk of expensive real estate that they don't get to take advantage of. So I'd be in favor of probably a minimum the 10 foot, but 5 foot on, I mean, you're talking about people's own property that they get to decide what they want to do with it. And if they've decided to chip in and help with ADUs and whatnot, I think we should make that as unrestricted as possible and let them utilize a minimal setback as possible.
Commissioner Van
Well, you probably know where I stand. I think I was pro 5 feet 3 meetings ago. And I'm still that way. I do think it's nice to see these scale drawings. It really does match my vision of giving homeowners the most flexibility of where they can put that ADU while keeping the primary unit, hopefully the most functional and intact as it used to be. So I think 5 feet. I also do like the privacy glass option, and then the height, capping the height to 24 feet, I think is also helpful.
Anyone else like to voice an opinion? I'm in favor of the 5-foot setback with privacy glass.
I just have a question. I'm kind of indifferent either way because I feel like the 10 feet or 5 feet, we are basically a step forward from our 20 feet setback. One thing is from the functional, functionality. Can people, 5 feet, can people still do barbecue something and still in a safe way?
So, I think it's an interesting point, and I think that that 5 feet is not really a great space to put a barbecue in. And so the reason that we're looking at the 5-foot setback actually is because we were either looking at 2 yards ahead of him or in front of him behind the ADU that were both kind of too small to be used for much of anything. Or we could get 1 yard that was big enough to be useful, and then the other one is like a 5-foot, pretty much a privacy buffer, and in the back. And so the thought with the 5-foot wouldn't be that you'd want to have a barbecue back there. You probably do very little. You might like store a kayak or something. But then you would have the space in front of the ADU, and it would be like a, more substantial amount of space than you would otherwise get.
So, Tyler, like if I look the map here on the bottom right, there's that's the primary unit, and then there's 2 ADU. What is the distance between those ADU to the primary unit?
So it's to scale.
Is there a setback requirement between ADUs?
So we have, we're proposing a 5-foot minimum separation requirement between any 2 buildings that are separate. And so the way that it's modeled here, I think there would, Aaron, what do you think? That was like 7.5 or 10 feet between the ADUs and the primary unit?
On the bottom right-hand corner?
In the bottom right, maybe it was 15 between the primary.
Yeah, that's close, that's over 10. So that's, I'm trying to remember what, I had it diagrammed, or I had it measured out at one point, but I want to say it's closer to 15.
Yeah, so I think it's about 15 between the ADU with the 10-foot setback and the primary unit, and then 10 feet between obviously 10 feet between the ADU and the 10-foot setback and the rear lot line in that lower right situation. So in this case, you have the space between the primary unit and the ADU is fairly small, but it's kind of up to you guys how you think it best fits. Like, it's a judgment call, really, because I think it can be perfectly safe in either event.
Speaker, speak up.
From the functionality also, it's kind of like, yeah, it gives some space. Can people actually use it? Or it's, you have some space, you cannot really use it?
So that was actually what was pushing us back towards the 5-foot, because we were finding that the bigger that rear yard the rear yard setback, when it's either 5 or 10 feet, is quite small, probably too small for you to really want to do a whole lot of activity between the back of the ADU and the rear fence. But if you make that space smaller, you can open up enough space for that kind of middle yard between the main unit and the ADU to be big enough to do something substantial in. So like this is a 15-foot space as modeled. If this were 5 feet, that would be a 20-foot space then between the ADU and the primary unit. And this primary unit, as it's been drawn, is very, very generous. This would be an extremely large house. So the thought would be that you could do something with the 20 feet of space, certainly more than you could with 10 or 15 feet.
Commissioner Blocker.
I am totally in favor of the 5-foot setback as opposed to the larger, but I do have a question, and I don't think I'm going to get the answer, but I'm going to pose the question anyway. One of the major reasons that that the legislature is pushing ADUs is to increase housing availability and affordable housing at that. But when I've asked the question before, it kind of got sidestepped that we would deal with it later, but I think Commissioner Lowe alluded to the actual costs of construction being a major part of the cost of housing. And so if we consider having a single or even 2 ADUs added in a yard, that's well and good, and it certainly would provide more housing. But we've never addressed minimizing or keeping the actual development costs of those units extremely low for principal things like sewer, water, power, because those are pretty major items to housing, pretty much required. And if we cause the development costs of each ADU to be very high because of permit requirements, et cetera, costs for permits, I don't think we'll get a lot of ADUs or accomplish what we're really trying to accomplish. So my question is there a way we're going to be able to keep the actual development of ADUs at a minimum kind of a cost where sewer, water, and power are also going to be required?
Okay, so
I can answer that. The city doesn't have any jurisdiction over those, so we can't change the rate. So all we could do in the city is look at certification elements, such as other cities are looking at self-certification, expediting the process in certain ways. Our impact fees are required to be half of what it would be for a single-family development. We are no longer going to have a land use review for ADUs, so that takes some of the cost and timing away. And I mean, those are the things that the city actually has control over directly. Did you want to add to that?
yeah, this, to some extent, it ties into, I don't know, if looks like he's left now, but this was Harvinder Singh's comment. The city has limited kind of levers to pull for making the construction itself cheaper. We can, as Aaron said, we're not going to have an ADU land use permit anymore, so that's one less permit that you got to pay for. The time reduction that comes with not going through that process also should lower your carrying costs as a developer. We could, impact fees for ADUs are actually going to be required by state law to be half or no more than half the amount that you would charge for a single family home. And so that is going to be one of the updates. So that will have some impact, no pun intended. And you could, if you ever did wanted to look at, how the city requires frontage and utility improvements as far as like undergrounding and things, there might be something there, but that would be a whole topic in its own right that may be worth addressing. But I think that would be something that we would want to discuss and really think about on its own terms, because there would be a whole conversation there beyond this. And then I guess the last thing is that builders will get a little bit of economy of scale whenever they are building ADUs or a duplex for that matter. Anytime they're building multiple units at the same time, you are using your labor and materials more efficiently than if you were doing two separate projects, right? So you can, your concrete pour runs faster, the amount of time you take for framing runs faster, and so that should theoretically lower the cost per unit a little bit. But then you also get into stuff that we don't control, like the building codes. We update and implement our building codes, but those are often also decided at the state or even regional level. So there's not as much you can do on that front.
So it appears that we have a majority of the commissioners in favor of the 5-foot setback. The sides,
Well, yeah, I think we were already proposing to do the 5 foot on either side.
okay.
Yeah.
So I think we're very close to voting on one of the options, but before we move there, well, let me ask, before we vote on there, is there anything else that you wanted direction on that we haven't addressed?
Honestly, I think with what we've got here, we could move, yeah.
Okay. So I have a question on a totally separate area. When you mentioned that we moved the design standard to the design code section. So my question there is, did that create any new requirements for single-family homes?
So technically it already did, because anything that you have to do for middle housing, you would have to also do for single-family homes. The state's model code came with a lot more design or not a lot, but some more design language than we actually adopted precisely for, or recommended to adopt precisely for this reason. The one that we did, that we have recommended really moving forward on is a provision that would limit the amount of lot width essentially that a driveway could take up, so that a driveway could not take up more than 60% of the width of the lot. And that is already a standard practice in single-family house construction, that you wouldn't have, that lots are not generally built with a driveway that's more than, 2/3 the width of the lot. So we don't think that it will practically change anything with single-family homes and be, requiring something that they do anyway, just from tradition. But we thought that it might be helpful just as a safeguard in case somebody tried to do it with middle housing. Just because it is a new type of housing and you have more units going in, so maybe there would be some temptation to widen the driveway. And so we wanted to just, head off that possibility.
And then for the commission, our vote on these options doesn't say anything about the other affordable housing provisions with the $13 per square foot and the requirements. So I just want to make that clear to you that unless, as it stands now, our recommendation, if we approve one of these options here, would include that. I just want, Commissioner Lowe.
Yeah, so I want to make sure I hear it right. The affordability, the 10% policy is not a state requirement, correct?
That's correct. So you could imagine this list going on with more options for the other affordability policy as well. That writing it all out would look a little absurd, but we could imagine that there, is an option H, that concerns that other policy too. It's on the table, so you don't limit yourselves to this. It's more of a framework for you guys to think about.
But the reason we brought affordable housing before you at this time is because the state statutes limit when we can update our affordable housing code. So this is an opportunity because we're currently affecting the zoning, we're upzoning technically with middle housing. And so this is an opportunity to do that. It's not like other code where we can do it at any time.
So if we don't do it,
Then we can't do it until we upzone again,
And that goes
whenever
for
that
the-
would be.
Oh, sorry.
So,
I was just going to say, and that's why we brought the townhome option forward too.
I guess if we don't do that 10% policy, we are still in compliance.
Mhm.
And
yes,
right, that's,
yes.
so I'm kind of, as I said, I would like be prudent to take one step at a time. And we have a plan already approved. And I think a majority of the residents also are saying doing minimum. And so how do I choose here? Meaning I would not vote for the 10% policy, but only on the townhome density policy and the setback.
I think maybe the way to do that is for you to, do we make a motion that we strip that from the other provisions, and then let's see if you get a second, and let's see if you get the support of the commission.
I think that it would help to make an amendment to the motion. So make the motion to approve and then make an amendment to that motion.
Do you say that again?
I think, and this is just how I've seen it done in council, I could be completely wrong here, but you would move to recommend for the requested action. Let's say you wanted to do ADU with 5-foot setback, no townhome density bonus policy. And then you would amend the motion, is how I believe it.
Okay. So, you will have that opportunity.
So, just to make sure I hear it right, so I will, as I mentioned, I would vote for E, option E, which is no townhome density, and the setback is 5 feet. But I do not want to, I want to leave the affordability housing 10% out.
So I think we would start with a motion to amend the requested action, because we have here, I move to recommend for city council adoption proposed ordinance. So I think we should start with adding an option, G, that is the same as E, but no affordable housing provisions.
That's us, I mean, as long as we're clear on what we're doing when we walk out of here tonight, I think we'll be good.
Okay, so.
I'm putting this up here, but just for visual reference only. Sorry.
So someone needs to make a motion.
Make a motion to include the option G for us to vote.
Second.
You would need to please qualify what that would include.
Oh, option G is ADUs with 5 feet setback, no townhouse density bonus policy with no 10% affordable housing provision.
Thank you.
And does that, the language, no 10% affordable housing provision, does that wipe out that entire?
It would
the
take out that.
$13 per square foot, the
It would take out that whole section and any other section that only existed because of that section.
It removes all affordable housing provisions.
Yes.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. So let's discuss it. Let's discuss it. Who would like to comment on that motion? Commissioner Van Hatten.
So you guys all got an email from Carol Simpson. In that, she had it was one of her very long emails. She had a section where she listed 3 different developments, where she calculated the fee in lieu. Her math was a little bit funky, but when I did it, if the 10% affordable housing was in effect for those 3, we would have ended up with 9 affordable housing units, potentially 1 ADU, because one of the units had 47 houses, so 0.7. Probably would have ended up in an ADU and $134,000 in fees. I don't see where, this policy only affects new construction. And it makes affordable housing for people who want to live in Newcastle. And they're deed restricted, they'll be affordable forever. So I don't see where, I guess I'm against the motion for those reasons.
You've already spoken, Maggie, so let's see if anybody else wants to before we give you a second crack. Other commissioners want to speak to this?
I am gonna follow from Paul and say, yes, I would oppose. They're removing the 10% affordable housing provision, just because I have read emails where people do want affordable housing, and just removing that doesn't do justice to Carol's email, for instance. So we need to hear everybody, and we are representing everyone, and we'll probably have to fall in the middle somewhere. So this is all about a compromise, and a compromise also means opening it up to people who want affordable housing and are not able to get it right now. So we need to do everything in our power to offer that. So in short, so I'm going to oppose that one. Thank you.
Commissioner Blocker?
I would say that I understand what the other two commissioners have just spoken are saying, but I think we still have opportunity to get back to that in the future too, if it's important. And while it is only related to new construction, I don't think the gain over what the perception of much of and many of the residents of Newcastle desire Newcastle to be, I don't think that it's there. I think the bigger restriction to affordability, frankly, in Newcastle is that the damn prices are too high. It isn't about percentages or making them a few percent less than the total. Land and building is just too expensive here, and I don't think it'll work. So I guess I'm saying I'm pro the motion.
Commissioner Lowe?
Yeah, I think I have a different take when, in terms of some of the data Carol provided. For me, the reason I don't want the 10% affordable housing provision here really is I don't think it's effective. I don't think that action will solve the affordability, and putting there it doesn't really make Newcastle affordable. That's the reason I don't want it's there. It feels like we are doing something. Do we actually really provide affordable housing, 9 units? That's not an effective solution.
Okay. I oppose the motion. I'm in favor of the affordable housing provision. But that puts us in a bit of a quandary because we are now a 6-member commission, and if it's 3-3, it doesn't pass. But the other option, going with option E, is the flip side of the coin. That would also be 3-3, and that wouldn't pass. So I think I'm just taking a little time out here to have us think this through, see if, we might vote for something, I might vote for something that I don't really support in order to get the greater good of getting this to the council with all of the other things that we need to, but Aaron, am I reading this correctly as far as you understand things?
I started bringing my Roberts rules to meetings with me, so you are correct. I just looked it up. A tie vote would fail the motion. Tie vote on this would also fail the motion.
So let's see what happens if we, let's take a vote on this one and see, and then we'll take the next step. So the motion is to recommend for City Council adoption proposed ordinance number 2024-671, including policy option letter G. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, so it fails 3-3. Would someone like to make a motion for another option here? Option E, which includes the affordable housing provision.
I move to accept option E as written and as discussed here. Do I need to read out the whole thing? Or just, is that sufficient? You got the idea.
And I second it.
Okay, so we have a new motion. Before we vote on this, can we have another vote on an option we've already rejected? Do you know of any reason why we couldn't do that?
Well, you guys only just rejected G just
G.
now, which I just.
You
typed
rejected
46.
adding G just now.
Right,
So the others have not had any action taken on them.
right, but suppose we reject E. What happens then? Can we go back to E, can we go back to E or G? Can we have another vote on the same thing rather than have a stalemate?
I mean, you could have further, I mean, ooh.
I shouldn't have asked the questions. I think we could have been forgiven for just going ahead and doing it without checking the rules.
I feel like once it's been voted on, it's dead. Jane was gonna be here a while. I can ask her.
Yeah,
Give me
let's-
2 minutes?
Sure.
Anyone needs a bio break?
We could take a break, but I'd say let's just sit here and wait for a bit. Sure.
Okay, folks. It's me again, folks. I'm still of the opinion that the fact that this stuff isn't required, and there's such a thing as unintended consequences. And I can't foresee any right now, but I've been around the block enough to know that if we hastily do something, I'm not ruling any of this out at a future date. I'm just not comfortable at this point in time, following the options that were given to us here, if they weren't required. And of course, if they were required, we wouldn't be voting on them. So unintended consequences is the point I'm trying to make, and taking a little bit extra time. We can do this, like Aaron said, that there are specific times that we can do it, but we can update this as we go along.
The council can also do something different. We could send something to them, and they can debate it and decide whether they want to do it. So, for example, we could vote on option E, that includes the affordable housing thing, send it to the council, and they could strip it out. But I think that would require one of the people who really opposes the affordable housing thing to vote in favor of it, even though they don't personally support it. Because otherwise, we're still stuck at 3-3. Unless we have a ruling from the city clerk that we can go back to G. I would be okay with G now and let the council do the affordable housing part of it, just so we can get the rest of this to them.
Is it, and this may be just my relative newness at this side of the business, but is it possible for you guys to send it on, but with explicitly making no recommendation on the 10% affordable rule? And to say that you endorse the rest of it, but not the 10%?
Oh, yeah, I think that's a way out. Yeah.
Should I type in H?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, we'll surprise Aaron with that. We've already figured it out.
H is a good idea too, because there are certain technicalities. See you guys. Well, there's certain technicalities about re-voting on an issue that's already been done, and I'm a little fuzzy, but I know enough to be dangerous. But if we had a new, like an H, we would be in essence voting on a different thing and not run into the restriction where you need a majority vote to decide the same issue twice in an
Yeah.
evening.
Commissioner Blocker, you had a comment? Oh.
I'm thirsty, I'd like to run for water, but I'm afraid you're going to vote.
We're in the same place right now.
I'm running.
We'll wait for you.
If you vote quick, you'll have a free seat. In the absence of Blocker, my vote counts for two. All in favor?
Well, I guess while I'm
So Charlie,
Yeah, but we need to have you on record.
so, when we will have, the number 7 commissioner, do we have some date? Oh,
As far as I know, the mayor is not given any indication that he's going to appoint somebody. And as far as I know, the council hasn't given any indication that they're going to change the rules so that that would give another way for a commissioner to be appointed. So I expect that we'll be operating with 6 until the election, until there's a new mayor or a new majority on the council. Did you get a hold of her?
She is on the phone with Jane, so no.
Okay,
No
we'll just be
openings
patient.
there.
Anybody else need a break while we're waiting here? Okay, so we'll, feel free, just come back promptly. When we come to the calendar portion of our meeting, we'll talk about whether or not we want to meet in August or take that month off. So just be thinking, maybe you can look at your calendars and see.
Hey, on that same topic, July 23rd is the first concert in the park, which is, we have a meeting that day. So I was going to propose maybe we could find a different day for that meeting, if possible.
I want to say thank you to the diehards in the audience. Appreciate it.
I spoke to our clerk. Our rules don't say anything about that, so we'll just take another vote. We'll just vote until we have a vote we're happy with.
Okay. Well, while you were gone, Tyler came up with an option H, where there was no recommendation one way or another on the 10% affordable housing, which I think we would all be happy with, and the council will still have an opportunity to discuss that.
Okay.
Okay, so to be clear, that would mean the council gets to choose
Right.
on that option.
Right.
Okay.
Okay, that works.
Okay, so let's have another motion. Would somebody like to make a new motion? Or did we have a motion on the table? I don't remember if we did or not for that. You made a motion, but, and you got a second, so we need to have a vote on that one.
That vote was to just take E straight up, I think.
Yes. Okay, so this is where you'll go on record with your position on this. So let's go ahead and, all in favor of adopting for city council adoption the ordinance 2024-671, including option letter E, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Wait a second, I want to be sure you know what you're voting on, because you're not voting on this, you're voting on,
Okay.
okay. All opposed?
Thank you, Chair. Opposed?
Okay, so the motion fails 3-3. Yeah. No past motions. Now we can entertain a new motion. Would anyone like to make a new motion for option H?
I move we accept option H in all its splendor, which incorporated some of the previous elements and no recommendation on the 10% affordable housing provision.
Do we have a second?
I second.
All in favor, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Present.
I'm sorry, was that 6-1? I mean, 5-1 on option H?
I think so.
Okay,
Yeah.
Walker dissenting.
And you really mean the present, okay.
So it's 5-0-1.
501, yeah. Well, I've never heard of a 501 in city business, but
Well, I'm just not sure what to do with present.
Sometimes present means no.
Like an abstention.
Sometimes it doesn't, but when it means something, it means no.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
okay. I think then that we are through item 8.1 and we're moving to general business. There's no general business. There's an additional public comment period, which I'll open now for anyone who is interested in making a comment after hearing everything you heard tonight, and sticking around as long as you did. Nobody's moving toward the podium, so we'll close the additional public comment period. And we get to the planning calendar, and we've got two things to think about. Our July meeting, which falls on one of the concert in the park nights, the first one, and our August meeting, which I am going to be traveling, and so I will not attend that one regardless. And you could meet without me under Vice Chair Troutman, or we could take that meeting off. So let's take July meeting first.
So
Why don't you talk about it, Paul?
Yeah, so July 23rd is the meeting on the calendar, but that is also the first concert in the park that the city's putting on, which I do like to attend those. So I was hoping we could maybe not cancel entirely, but can we move that meeting to the Wednesday before? I don't know what this room's calendar looks like, I guess.
Or we could move it to the next Wednesday, which is the 30th.
We have a special July month with 5
Yeah.
Wednesdays.
I'll be out of the country on the 30th.
No trouble.
Can we do the 16th? Just move it up a week?
I'm busy the last 3 Wednesdays. The first 2 Wednesdays work good.
I'm also gone on July 16th.
Perhaps we should just postpone July and August.
That's fine. We have the critical areas ordinance that we have to adopt this year for state code and the zoning map. We might not have a lot of time to talk about a lot of other things if we're trying to rush those. But that's not to say,
Could we get that in June?
you'll be seeing our first crack at it in June. But
June.
unlike most of the suggestions are, so staff's request, if we're going to cancel 2 meetings in a year where we have to have things approved, would be that you have your comments ready at the first meeting. Talk to people before the first meeting.
What about a meeting on a day other than a Wednesday? So that instead of the 23rd, the 24th, Thursday, the 24th?
That works for me.
I'm out the last 3 weeks.
So you'd be missing both the 23rd and the 24th, right? Okay.
And the 30th and 31st, and the 16th and the 17th.
We can plan on having a vote in September, assuming everyone's going to be here September 24th.
Well, we can have one commissioner absent.
We can, exactly. So what I was just going to say was, we wouldn't take a vote until we have at least all 6 of you here on the recommendation. And then,
Why do
as
we
long
have
as
to
we're
do
going
that?
to have,
I mean, I think that would be a courtesy, but do we actually have to do that?
we don't, but I was just trying to make everyone feel like they had an opportunity. Plus, it's going to take a couple meetings to get through.
Yeah, okay.
So if we're doing critical areas and zoning in June, July, it sounds like we'd potentially like to cancel or move. And then August, Chair Gatzik will not be here. Is anybody else not going to be? Well, we have a quorum in August.
1, 2, 3, 4. Oh, the 27th.
Different chairs in all the ends.
Five of us.
Yeah. That everybody can be here for the August meeting? Did you, Stu Camp?
Let's go for this.
Yeah, I can't do July or August, actually.
Okay.
Well, actually, I can do August, but nobody else can do August. I could do August, but nobody else can do August.
I thought just Charlie was going to be gone.
Yeah, I think,
I can do August, I'm sorry. July is the one when I'm gone 3 weeks.
okay. So we could move July to the Thursday,
24.
24th. That would give us 5 people. And
August the 24th, 20th or 27th.
if we need August, or we could take August off, it depends on, I mean, we could decide that in July.
Wait, but, I'm sorry. Stu is not going to be there for the 24th either in August, but you
July
will.
I'm bad, August Charlie's bad.
Yeah, I'm gone
Bad.
in August.
But you'll be there for the 24th.
I can be there for the July 24th.
Okay.
I mean, oh, that's okay. I fly out the next day, but it's an evening flight, so.
We could also do the 22nd, which is a Tuesday. Was a Thursday preferred? I'm not in the office on.
Can you, Stu, are you here the 22nd of July? That whole week, right? Yeah. Okay. Well, of those who are going to be here in July, is the 22nd any better than the 24th?
Doesn't matter to me.
Make a difference to you?
Yes. Yes, it does.
22nd is better for you?
Personally, yes.
Okay.
Childcare and stuff.
Okay, so why don't we then,
Let's do the 22nd.
22nd? And then we can decide in July 22nd whether or not we want to meet in August.
Get that rescheduled. Just a reminder for everyone to email me your ideas for future discussions, so we can discuss discussions.
Okay. That brings us to the end of our agenda. Thank you all for all your contributions tonight. We're sending the housing ordinance to the city council in time for them to adopt it and avoid the state-imposed ordinance, so hopefully they will like it. With that, we will adjourn the meeting.
Yeah.